Hi, Gabe.
I cannot seem to master the right lighting for Zoom without getting this shadow.
No, I know. I hear you. This is one of the few times I'm trying my child's sort of playroom here. You can see the toys behind me, maybe. See how it goes.
In the playroom, I brought the child.
All right.
Sorry, I'm a little late. Could you just assign me as the captioner and I'll just set that right up?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So maybe, do you mind just refreshing my memory how to do that?
Go into participants under my name, Catherine Zielinski, and assign as a closed captioner. Yep, got it. Thanks.
No problem.
Sorry for being so late.
No, not at all. So it's 6:30 now, but we'll wait just a few more minutes to see if we have some more attendees.
I'll be right back.
All right, well, I think we'll just get going here, and as more people join, that'll be great. This is being recorded, and we'll be posting this on our full return site as well, so that people can see the presentation that we're going to provide just today. Certainly important stuff here as we're looking at the day after tomorrow, returning all of our students, about 800 students, or actually with a DLA, probably about 630 students or so to the high school. And sort of how we're going to accommodate those students throughout the day is what I'm really going to focus on today, and also a little bit about the teaching and learning that's going to go on at school in this last sort of quarter of the year, coming out of our sort of pandemic learning here as well. So I'm going to sort of start with going through a presentation, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the document that's posted on our website as well, which is the full return plan that has a little bit more detail, fleshed out in a little bit more depth, and then also just a quick look at our full return site, which we've been sending out all year, sort of where our newsletter is embedded, that has a lot of that information in it as well, and also sort of broken down some screencast presentations and things for students and families. So I'm going to start just by kind of going through the PowerPoint presentation that is what I shared with students last week, and also posted on our full return website. Joining me as well, just I should mention, is Amy Benner, who is our assistant principal. She's here with her 8-month-old son. Thank you for joining us. And towards the end of the presentation, if you want to type some questions as we go in the Q&A, please feel free to, and we'll kind of work our way through those questions as well as we do that. So I'm going to share, as you can see right now, a presentation and just kind of click through this, and then we'll also sort of, like I said, go through the website and the full return document that was sent out a couple weeks ago. So the first thing I just want to do is make sure that I thank all of the people who contributed to this plan at the school, and I'll give you a little sense of our process as well. We had convened sort of a task force, mostly of teachers, administrators, our school nurse, paraprofessional, director of athletics, Mr. Sumner, who may be joining us here a little bit later as well, in order to talk through all of the logistical challenges. And then we used what was kind of being sort of talked about at those task force meetings and consulted with our academic coordinators, who are the academic heads of our departments, a principal's advisory council, which is a group of about 8 to 10 students who met twice to take a look at the plan and give some input. Obviously, we consulted with our district facilities personnel, as well as our custodial staff at the school, and also had the Norton Fire Department come in to take a look at our classroom layouts, making sure, and also the hallways, making sure that everything was safe there for our students. So we kind of had a task force that was doing the heavy lifting, and then brought in various experts to try to consult with us too as we were making some of these decisions. The first thing that I started off with students, and I'll sort of say here again that we've been kind of hammering all year, is talking about our Portrait of a Norton Graduate and what that means about personal responsibility and accountability. One of our actual sort of core outcomes that we want students to come away with is this understanding of how their decisions as individuals impact the community as a whole. And we've been focusing on these 3 W's all year: to wear masks, wash our hands, and wait 6 feet apart. And we're going to stick with those 3 W's throughout the course of the year here for our last fourth quarter. Definitely when it comes to weight, we're going to try to maintain 6 feet of social distance wherever we can, and definitely while we're eating, being unmasked if we're out taking mask breaks, those types of things. But in the classrooms, we're going to be at 3 feet, at least 3 feet in all of our classrooms as we go. And I'll show you some pictures of some classroom space and talk through sort of our process to make sure that we had the right furniture and that kind of mixed together in the classrooms. So as you can see, this was sent out a little while ago, but where we are in the transition week, it's Tuesday, April 6th. So we have one more, our last day of hybrid learning tomorrow, April 7th. So we'll have those 2 cohorts, and then we'll start our full return schedule on Thursday, April 8th, Friday, April 9th, and then we'll have basically the chance to go through our 7-day rotation before April break. And what this is the schedule that we're going to be running with in the school. So it's going to be a change from where we are now. We're going to do away with those alternating weeks. And this is actually going to be a bit of a return to our schedule that we used at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year and had used for a few years previous to that. So any student who is in the 10th to 12th grade is pretty familiar with this schedule. We did make some adjustments based on some input from students, and that was to try to elongate LLB a little bit. That was one of the things from the hybrid schedule they thought was a really important addition, was sort of the longer LLB. And that gave them an opportunity. And LLB is like our sort of homeroom, sort of advisory block, and it's kind of a place for students to get whatever they need. In many cases, that is actually just some time to get a few things straight before the beginning of the day, maybe see another teacher, check their school brains, make sure they're caught up on work, and just kind of generally think about the day. And that was something that students felt really strongly about in order to stave off some burnout, was to have that kind of buffer zone to come in, get situated for the day. So we're going to continue that. We did shorten it a little bit to about 35 minutes, but it's longer than it had been. And that'll also be the time that students can get breakfast, which is something that we're going to be offering at the school for the first time this year on Thursday. And we also wanted to have an opportunity to provide our seniors with a little bit of a privilege to come late if they fulfill the criteria that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. We also had to add our 4th lunch so that we can actually have enough room for everybody and keep our lunches around 155 to 170 students. And we have plenty of rain or shine seating for that. And when it's nice out and students are using the outdoors, we'll have plenty of seating indeed. With that, we also kept pretty much the exact same meeting time, 53 minutes with 7 minutes of passing time. And that's going to allow students to use our one-way pathways throughout the building in order to get to class and make sure that we don't have any great congestion, students coming face to face, intersections and things like that. So one thing I just wanted to sort of point out is back at the middle of March, we had actually done a survey with our students, just getting their general sense of concern that they had coming back, as well as some specifics, and asking them sort of to rank what things were the most important ideas for them, physical distance in class being one of the most important ones, certainly our physical distance at lunch as well. So these were things that we asked them about, as well as some other questions about their excitement level and some ideas to celebrate the return, things like that, and took some of that anecdotal data as well. So we tried to address all of these in the next few slides here as far as our safety considerations to make sure that we're putting all of our students at ease. As you can see from the previous slide, we did have a sizable number of students who were quite concerned, who were quite concerned about returning to school or had a pretty high level of concern. We had certainly had quite a few who were not really at all concerned, but we still had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% of students who felt concerned or very concerned. So one thing that we're doing, and as we kind of go through this, I'll talk about things that are very much staying the same, like our 3 Ws, and things that are being changed up a little bit. One thing that's staying mostly the same is our one-way floor plan. So students have been working with this throughout the course of the year. When we've had about 300, 315 students or so in the building, they've made their way around the building using this floor plan. One thing when talking with students, they identified some of our stairwells as being the most congested points. So one thing that we did in order to try to alleviate some of that pressure is made one adjustment down here in the corner. So this is our second floor, and this is the science wing, and on the left-hand side, and then on the bottom is our English and social studies wings. And where that intersection happens, we're actually going to make that hallway, which is a very short section, 2-way, so that we can use our front staircase, which is very wide and open, as an up and down staircase. So that'll be one of the few places in the building that there'll be 2-way traffic. Our other stairwells are about 38 inches wide as far as between the railings. So we wanted to make sure that those stayed one way. But by making this a 2-way stairwell, we hope to try to have some of our pressure let off some of the other stairwells throughout the building. So that's one adjustment we made. The rest of it is staying the same. This is also something that we're really very serious about students following. We've been emphasizing it in the hallways over the past few days. We'll continue to do so as we all return. Just with double the number of students, it's going to be more important than ever. And this is why we provided 7 minutes of passing time so that students could get their desks clean before they left their classroom and then make their way to their next class following these one-ways. We're going to keep our staggered arrival and also add, as I mentioned, the senior privilege of late arrival here. And yeah, if you have questions, please do go ahead and throw them into the chat here, and we'll definitely address them at the end, or I'll take a quick look if it's pertinent to sort of what we're discussing at the moment. We'll definitely address it then as well. So please do add your questions there if you'd like. So our arrival is very much the same way that it has been. Our doors open at 7:25. If students ride the bus, they're typically waiting to get off the bus and come right in at that point in time. Next thing is we're going to serve breakfast for between 7:25 and 7:45. And we're keeping it pretty tight window there so that students, when they come in, they'll go right to breakfast. Something that was a practice in LLB in previous years is students might come down, grab something to eat, and go back to their LLB homeroom and consume that breakfast. And that's something we really can't have, because in LLBs, we're going to be at 3 feet. We need to make sure everyone is eating right in the cafeteria. So when students get off the bus, or if they're going to arrive, we're going to serve breakfast in the cafeteria during that window. We're going to stop serving right at 7:45. Students will have the next 10 minutes or so to finish their breakfast and then go to LLB and then to their first block class afterwards. So students who are being dropped off, if they want to have breakfast, they should maybe come right into the building, get right to the breakfast line, grab their food. If they're drivers, they might have to plan a little bit ahead in order to get there at 7:45 in order to get the last sort of wave of breakfast to be able to eat it and then head off to class. And we're going to be eating just in our cafeteria, as we'll talk about a little bit later, and also outside. We're also introducing our senior privilege here. If there are seniors who are cumulatively passing all of their classes, are in good standing sort of behaviorally and attendance wise, they're eligible for the late arrival. Maybe some of you have seen the permission slip that's gone home. And the idea here is that seniors can make the choice whether they want to come in at 8:15 or they want to come in for LLB and maybe meet with a teacher or finish up a quiz or a test or something like that. Or they can arrive at 8:15 and go right to their first block class. So the idea here obviously is to give our seniors who have been managing, quite a bit over the course of the year here, a little bit more freedom to manage their time as they're coming back to school here full time. One thing that we started off the year with but did away with was our staggered dismissal. At the end of the day, it really did not seem like we were getting much out of it, and that we had no problem sort of getting 300 students out of the building pretty quickly at the end of the day. So we started with a staggered dismissal, but then moved away from it. We're going to move back to it just with twice the number of students, because we do have a lot of students kind of filtering through the exits. Those sometimes can be bottlenecks. So what we're going to do is we're going to have 207 be our odd number rooms and 209 our even number rooms, in order to make sure that students are pretty well staggered as they're leaving the building. Some of the points of emphasis that we're going to make and have been making over the past few days and will continue to, is to make sure that students are following their mask compliance, meaning that they're wearing a mask, it's covering their nose and their mouth, that they're also going to be following those one-way hallways. And something that we started off the year with thinking was going to be quite an issue and ended up not being for a while, but has certainly kind of come back to something that we want to focus on, which is that we don't want students using a bathroom during the passing time. And ordinarily, we'd very much encourage students to use bathrooms during passing time. But when we don't have any control over how many students are in there, we don't want that creating an unsafe environment where there's a bunch of students sort of together in close proximity. And there's obviously no one supervising whether or not they're wearing masks, things like that. So we want to make sure that these are safe environments. And so what we're asking students to do is to make sure they go to their next class, get a pass, so that we can know and we can regulate exactly how many students are in the bathrooms at one time. And so we did up those limits. They have been 3 most of the year as far as students per bathroom. And we are upping that to 5 and then giving students 4 passes throughout the course of the day. If students need more passes, they can certainly see their guidance counselor or email Mrs. Benner or myself, and we can adjust that as needed. Some of our classroom space, as you saw, students definitely identified that as one of the most pressing concerns. And what we have here, interestingly enough, is we have many tables in our building and also many desks. And initially, sort of the tables were used to create like larger tables to facilitate group work, and they can move around. Great in normal times, but not the greatest in COVID times when we need to space kids out by 3-foot social distance. So those tables are 5 feet, which means only 1 student per table. So what we had to do is do some creative mixing and matching of some desks, some tables, in order to make sure that students could sit at the table and also be 3 feet apart with a desk. And so what we found is kind of pairing a desk and a table together and having a student sort of be on the far end of the table away from the desk gets 3 feet, and it gives us the best sort of flow throughout the building. So that's kind of what you see here. These are evenly spaced desks with the math classroom. The social studies classroom at the bottom, you see that sort of pairing. And then luckily in our science rooms, our tables are actually 6 feet. So by having students on the very ends of those, we're able to fit 2 students per table there. And those will be spaced out, as you can see, throughout that science room. So those are mostly our classroom spaces. It kind of depends on which classroom you're in as far as which mix and match of furniture you have. And some teachers have found they'd prefer to arrange it so they have all of their groups of desks up front and their tables up back in order to allow students more freedom of movement to their desks in the classroom, which is fine, as long as that they're staying at those 3 feet social distance within the classroom. As I mentioned, we're going to be serving breakfast for the first time this year, starting on Thursday. And with that, we're going to be using our lunch spaces. And this gives you a little sense of what it looks like. And this is how we get to our maximum capacity, is that we have about 62 seats in our cafeteria. We had been using single desks, but we've reallocated those to classrooms and are now using folding tables in the cafeteria. And then in the gymnasium, we're going to be using those tables or the desks as well, and some tables mixed in. And we have, along with bleachers pulled out to give us sort of about 15 extra seats in the first 5 rows. And everyone is at 6 feet of distance, but we have 87 students inside the gym. And then outside, we're going to be moving our picnic tables out from underneath the overhang and utilizing some folding chairs out there. Students all year have been eating outside voluntarily, even in the the sort of depths of winter with snow flying around. So we're going to keep those out there, and that'll keep us, as you can see, at about 170 students at any given time here, 180 students, seats, rain or shine. And then obviously with good weather, we'll have more than 30 students outside for sure, maybe almost all of them. And that's how we're going to work with lunch. We also have a tent that was installed just last week, which is also available for lunchtime seating, rain or shine, but it's something that students are able to go under that tent if they'd like to as well. We'll be talking a little bit more about that with students as we kind of get used to that space. Our lunch procedures, and there's a picture of the gym seating as well, is pretty much the same as it has been. One thing that we're doing away with is we had done waves in order to facilitate sort of our cleaning and kind of keep a steady rotation of students through the different lunch spaces. We're going to kind of do away with those because we have 4 lunches now, and we have found that we can clean the spaces pretty efficiently. And with good weather coming, we'll have less and less students probably inside. We're going to seat mostly outside in the cafeteria if it's a nice day, and use the gym only as overflow. But then on bad weather days, we'll fill both and then the gym as well. This is also where students are going to eat their breakfast. And as I mentioned, arriving 7:25 to 7:45, students are going to have to eat that breakfast inside the cafeteria, or if it's a beautiful morning, outside. And then once they've done that, they should throw away their trash, make sure that their table, if they're inside, gets disinfected, and then head back to class. So we're not going to be allowing students to go back and forth, again, to make sure that we don't have students eating anywhere other than the cafeteria and LLB. Some few adjustments that I'm just going to touch on here briefly. We are going to start having in-person club meetings. So this is something that we have kind of slowly been phasing in, but now we're kind of opening that up almost entirely. The only rules really that we're going to abide by are we have to have our advisor or adult present to make sure that all of our safety protocols are going to be followed. That means at least 3 feet if students are seating close to each other, but more often than not, it's going to be 6 feet with clubs as they're smaller than classes and things like that. We're going to make sure everyone's wearing masks and making sure that we don't share items too much here, or at least if we have to, we're going to be doing so with our cleaning protocols in place. So after school, we're only going to meet then. We're not going to allow for evening meetings just because we're still doing the deep cleaning with our electrostatic cleaners every night in all of the classrooms. So we got to give our custodial staff all of their sort of free reign about the building to make sure everything gets cleaned. And some of the considerations with this is we still don't have a late bus. So it's something that we want to make sure that students are meeting after school. They have rides, and it might be, we've urged club advisors to still kind of poll their students. And in some cases, some clubs might still choose to meet remotely because it's more convenient for them. One thing that's key that we've been kind of harping on over the past few weeks is about parking. We have been staggering spots, but everyone should have been picking up a parking contract. So everyone has an assigned space if they have a parking permit. We want to make sure everyone does. It's free. They just need to fill out the form that's on our website to make sure that they can get it. We've been kind of filtering those more in, but it's just to make sure that when everyone arrives on Thursday, everyone has a space. So it's free parking. They just have to make sure they fill out that form, give a copy of or a picture of registration in order to make sure that they have that parking permit assigned. As I mentioned, for those of you who have seniors at the school, we're going to try out sort of as a pilot here, a late arrival privilege. These are the criteria for that we want to make sure that all students have passing grades, cumulative grades in all their classes, they're in good behavioral standing, and they have had a parental permission slip on file in the office. So we're not going to start this right away on the 8th, but we are going to start it on Monday the 12th for students who want to. And again, they can come in at 8:15 and go right to their first block class as long as they have met these criteria. One thing we don't ask we ask students not to do is to show up at about 8 and kind of hang out for those 15 minutes. We want to make sure that students have a place to go. So if they want to go to their LLB in order to get some extra work done or make up a test or quiz, or if they want to see a teacher in order to get some extra help or something like that, they know where they're going. So it's not some place where we just have students sort of walking the halls during LLB. So we definitely want students to take advantage of the late arrival, but to arrive between 8:15 and 8:22 if they choose to do so. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about some of our teaching and learning adjustments that we've been working on with teachers, presenting to teachers, and then we'll definitely open it up for some question and answers, and I'll give you a little bit of an orientation to some of the resources that are posted online. The big thing is that our first days of class, as we've been talking about, are really going to be like another September, as we're really going to focus on building group cohesion, trying to make sure that students kind of know each other. It's this very peculiar situation where students have been in the same class and maybe seen each other in live streams, but many of them have not been in the same room since last March. So it's something that's going to be very interesting to reconnect some of our students who haven't seen each other for a long time, and also to kind of reset those sort of norms and routines. We're really still going to focus on the things that we've been trying to focus on all year, which are our Portrait of a Norton graduate skills, things like self-awareness, self-management, relationship, and responsible decision-making. Those things are still going to be part of our curriculum. We really urge teachers to focus on our core curriculum standards, not to try to jam in everything that maybe we missed, or that we didn't get to during pandemic learning. This is still something we're going to be focusing on, those core understandings and skills, and also, thinking about upcoming standardized tests, things like AP. MCAS is going to be in the spring here as well, so we're going to just kind of focus on making sure that students are prepared for those, which should be aligned with our core curriculum from day one here as far as the beginning of the year. So we're not going to try to overwhelm students or try to catch students up. We recognize sort of where we are right now and making sure we're focusing on those core foundational things. One thing just as far as workload that's important to keep in mind is all year we've talked about learn from home work, and that's separate words, not quite homework. We've been aiming to try to have students complete about 1 period's worth of work while at home. And that's going to continue to be the focus, is that students, obviously now they're in class, we don't need a great deal of homework at home this year. We're going to be focusing on making sure that students kind of get back into this routine of school. We are going to allow teachers, or teachers will, assign enrichment and extension activities, or also formative assessments, and then just listed some sort of examples there as well. Obviously AP courses, they may need to do a little bit more assessment, but we're really looking on trying to make sure that we're easing students back in. One thing our principals advisory group kind of talked about is this kind of fear of burnout, and that's definitely not what we want to have. Students have been working extremely hard all year. They've been sort of forced to do a lot more than they normally would as far as self-regulation, self-management, all of those things, some of their own independent learning. And we want to make sure that we're really focusing on getting those students sort of settled and at school for the last quarter here, heading into next year and into graduation. So as I said, sort of that was just kind of the overview, a pretty lengthy presentation about it. I did just quickly kind of want to orient you to where some of these resources are. Our NHS full return, it used to be the hybrid site, but we changed it to our full return site, where I sort of send out the newsletter every week. Under the For Students and Families tab, we have really our most recent things. So our full reopening plan, and then some of the same information that I just went over for your reference if you want to go back and take a look at those. Also within that, we have some of the things that have not changed, such as our desk cleaning protocol. Mrs. Fay, one of our English teachers, giving a PSA about wearing your mask. And again, some of the protocols that I just went over are there. This is also where we'll be posting this recorded presentation for your future reference if you'd like. And then, as I mentioned, our full return plan is right here as a document as well. So if you have any questions or things that you missed and you want to go back, that's a great way to take a look, or to see those things. And then that full return plan, I'll just share with you sort of the extent of it. It has many of the new things. These are clickable links. So if you're concerned about food service, you can certainly go to that. And then also many of the things are guidelines from our initial reopening plan, and they're linked there as well if you want to go back and take a look at sort of cleaning supplies, various things that really have not changed based on our change in model. So that kind of covers it as far as the stuff that I had prepared, but I'd love to open it up to some questions, and Mrs. Benner can chime in. Is there anything that you wanted to add right now?
Just one of the things that would be helpful regarding those permission slips for senior late arrival is getting those in sooner than later. We want to get that on file and make sure we review eligibility so students can take advantage of that privilege. And otherwise, we're just excited to see everybody back.
Exactly. It's going to be a great, it's going to be as great of a step towards normalcy as we've had this, and it's going to be really exciting, I think, for all of our students to get back and see their peers as well. The one question right now in the chat and the Q&A has to do with following CDC guidelines. Yes, if your son or daughter is fully vaccinated, and that means 2 weeks after their second shot with either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine, or 3 weeks after the first shot of the Johnson & Johnson or the only shot of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they're considered fully vaccinated. And if that is the case, then if they're close contact in school, they do not have to quarantine. It's the same thing with students within 90 days of having actually had COVID. They do not have to quarantine within school if they're a close contact. So that is absolutely correct. So are there any other questions or things that I can answer for you this evening? All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, if there do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Mrs. Benner. We really do look forward to having your students back in our building full time, full in-person learning starting on Thursday. It is timing up pretty well. Our third quarter just ended. We're going to start our fourth quarter. It's also we'll be able to get through a full rotation of our schedule by break. So everyone will see sort of the full kind of effect of our schedule. And then off we go with a sprint from the end of April break to the end of the year. So thank you very much for attending tonight. And like I said, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Mrs. Benner, and we'll gladly answer them for you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a great evening.